those ancient memories that increase the sense of depression, but at the same time, looking for those pieces of resilience that can help you bounce back.
And let's focus on that, the point of resilience, what we can do ourselves and where we need the help of others, certainly God, and also a community as we proceed. I think that, again, people might feel at times, I'm not going to share about my depression because either I'm weak or there's something wrong with me spiritually. I think it's really important for us, let's just say in the church, to really make sure that we're sensitive, like you and your wife are sensitive in your church context if someone's alone, for whatever reason they're alone, that we don't isolate them further. We make sure to be intentional, to include. I think we have to do our job in the church to really make sure that depression isn't seen somehow as the unforgivable sin.
Yeah.
And I think that we really need to move away from a kind of shame-based engagement, that we really somehow cultivate an environment, a social environment where we would hope people would share. I mean, when I take prayer requests in context, usually people are praying for, the cat that's up in the tree, and that's a good thing to pray for. or they'll ask for prayer for, a physical need for a loved one. Rarely do I find someone praying for, I'm struggling with this mental dynamic or what have you. We normally don't. And I think even how we take prayer requests or affirm people who share, the courage it takes is key. You had shown courage in a forum we had done at New Wine, where you talked about some of your own challenges with depression at a couple of points in time. And I was wondering if you'd be willing to talk about that for our viewers and listeners, and then also add to it, to them, speaking directly to them, what are some simple things that can be done, whether it's individually or collectively? Because you say sometimes we can get a handle on it, at other times with the depression, it gets us, and we need other people to come in to help us, and certainly God. So could you speak both individually, personally, and what you did, and then what you would encourage our viewers and listeners to do, whether it's at the holiday season or just in general when dealing with depression, for themselves and loved ones?
The first I want to talk about has to do with a very traumatic experience that happened to me a year and a half ago now. As an elderly man, I needed my prostate operated on, and that was done. It was done properly, I'm sure, although I wasn't awake at the time to oversee that, but I'm sure it was done well by a capable man. But I had terrible complications from it, and within a month's time I had to have a second operation. I fell into a pit of despair. I just have to call it an acute depression. Part of the problem, of course, was here I am sitting as a professor of medicine for 45 years, knowing absolutely every complication can occur from this prostate surgery, and clearly I've got them all. And I am really, in response to that trauma, falling into a sense of despair, depression, a sense of the absence of God. I was desperate, literally desperate. Called my pastor. He had written a book about going through the valley of despair. I got it out and I read it and talked with him. Began using some spiritual exercises that I was familiar with, and gradually I felt myself rising out of that despair. In that instance, it was a specific traumatic set of experiences and a specific kind of therapy, getting started on thinking through. No antidepressants, just thinking through the nature of falling into despair and how do you grasp the trust that you used to have in God. How do you repair that? How do you bring that back again? It was through rehearsing some spiritual exercises, which literally were ancient pieces out of monasteries that I'd used many years ago, and in a matter of weeks, I was, in a word, cured.
What were a few of those, in case viewers and listeners want to know what were some of those ancient exercises?
Oh, well, you just have to go find them. There are monastic rule books and rituals you can go to, and they'll guide you. Okay, they're not hard to find.
Okay.
The second I want to speak to is this. I am perhaps of pretty much of an optimistic mood most of the time. But I am struck enough that if a person is not questioning, who am I? What is my life about? What am I here on earth for? Is it worth it? Those questions that in my youth we used to call the old existential questions. If a person is not struggling with those to the place where they feel beat down, they haven't yet been through the steps to an authentic life. So I think that kind of depression, that kind of loss of the sense of how wonderful life is, that is almost created by your examining life. If you don't have that, and maybe even have it recurrently, so that you continue to explore your life at a deep level, even at a deep enough level that it almost feels like being depressed again. If you don't have that experience, I wonder how it is that somebody who's happy-go-lucky all the time, have they really examined the depth of life?
So just to pause for a second, just for